There are moments when encountering a grizzly bear can be resolved through quick thinking, causing the animal to retreat. However, in less fortunate situations, a person's actions may provoke the bear, turning it aggressive. Unfortunately, this is precisely what happened to a group of campers, and the outcome was devastating. Join us as we recount the grim story of how several children tragically fell victim to one such predator. Deep within Siberia's dense and ancient forests, the sprawling landscape remained undisturbed, save for a remote summer camp nestled within its vast, unyielding embrace. The camp was a sanctuary for children seeking adventure and education in the wilderness. Its mission was to instill a profound respect for nature and survival skills in its young attendees, and for years, it had achieved its goal without incident. On a serene summer night, the campgrounds were cloaked in a shroud of tranquility. The only sounds that disturbed the calm were the whispers of the wind through the trees and the crackling of the evening campfires. The children, tucked safely into their sleeping bags in the rustic cabins, drifted off to sleep, lulled by the soothing rhythms of the forest. It was a night that seemed perfect in its quiet simplicity, but nature's balance is fragile, and the night's peace is about to be shattered. Outside, a grizzly bear, drawn by the scent of food, crept through the underbrush with an unnerving stealth. The bear had been foraging in the vicinity, its keen sense of smell leading it inexorably toward the camp. The camp's food storage area, a secured shed reinforced with heavy locks, held a tempting array of supplies, some of which had been carelessly left out. As the bear neared the storage area, its massive frame moved with an unsettling grace. The crack of a wooden beam under its weight and the sudden rustle of the bear's fur against the shed's walls were the first signs of trouble. Inside the cabins, the campers remained oblivious to the impending danger. The bear's first action was to slam its immense paws against the shed door, causing the flimsy lock to shatter under the impact. The noise was a grating, booming sound that jolted the counselors awake. The camp leaders, including the seasoned guide Dmitry Volkov, and the young but diligent assistant Natalia Ivanov, leaped from their beds. Their training had prepared them for many scenarios, but nothing could fully prepare them for the chaos that was about to ensue. The bear's silhouette loomed against the shed's doorway in the darkness as it wrestled with the latch. The metallic clang of containers being thrown about echoed through the night. With a flashlight in hand, Dmitry ran toward the noise, his heart pounding. Natalia followed closely, armed with a bear deterrent spray, a last line of defense. The campers were starting to stir, but the confusion and disorientation made it difficult for them to comprehend the severity of the situation. As Dmitry and Natalia reached the scene, the bear, having finished with the food supplies, turned its attention to the campsite. The bear's rage was palpable, and it was clear that it would not be deterred by anything less than force. The camp had been a place of laughter and learning until this night, but the bear's appearance transformed it into a scene of terror. The children who had been sound asleep were now scattered in a frenzy of fear. Two children, Marko Petrov and Alina Volkova, had wandered slightly away from the central campfire. They were nestled in their sleeping bags under a canopy of stars, blissfully unaware of the chaos erupting around them. The bear's eyes focused on the vulnerable duo, reflecting a primal rage. With a guttural roar that reverberated through the forest, it lumbered towards them. Its claws slashed through the underbrush, and the rustling of leaves seemed magnified in the tense silence that followed. Marko and Alina, roused from their sleep, felt the ground vibrate as the bear drew near. Panic set in, and they scrambled to get up, but their efforts were clumsy and fraught with terror. The struggle to escape was hopeless. The bear's powerful limbs swept aside any obstacle in its path, and its overwhelming presence stifled Marko and Alina's screams. Dmitry and Natalia reached the scene just in time to witness the bear's attack in all its horrifying brutality. Attempting to intervene, Dmitry hurled objects at the bear, anything he could find. The bear's aggression intensified with every failed attempt to drive it away. Although effective in other circumstances, Natalia's bear spray seemed powerless against the sheer ferocity of the animal's onslaught. In the frenzy of the attack, the bear's claws and teeth found their marks. The campers' struggle was desperate and tragic, but ultimately futile. Marko and Alina, unable to fully comprehend their fate, met a brutal end as the bear's rage was vented upon them. The aftermath of the attack was a scene of heart-wrenching devastation. Dmitri and Natalia, exhausted and traumatized, could only attempt to provide what little aid they could. The bear, sated by its violence, eventually retreated into the forest, leaving behind a scarred and shattered camp. The arrival of emergency services and the local authorities marked the beginning of a grim reckoning. The bodies of Marco and Alina were recovered from the scene, and the extent of the bear's rampage became evident. The camp, which had previously been a symbol of adventure and learning, was now a stark reminder of nature's unpredictable and often merciless side. The incident shook the local community. Once celebrated for its educational approach to wilderness survival, Camp Turgenev faced intense scrutiny. The attack ignited a firestorm of debate over safety regulations for camps located in bear-inhabited regions. Questions were raised about the adequacy of existing precautions and the preparedness of camp staff to handle such emergencies. In the wake of the tragedy, a concerted effort was made to overhaul safety protocols. New guidelines were introduced, focusing on more robust measures to prevent bear encounters and ensuring that counselors were equipped with advanced training and resources. The incident served as a grim lesson to wilderness camps across Russia, leading to widespread changes in operations and a renewed emphasis on safeguarding against the threats posed by the wild. In Alaska's vast and uncharted wilderness, the sun dipped below the jagged horizon, casting long shadows over the dense forest. The area was known for its rugged beauty and untamed nature, a realm where human encroachment was always met with an unyielding challenge. This was the setting for a high-stakes adventure for Simon Langford, a wealthy businessman, and his son Owen. Both had come with a singular goal: to experience the raw thrill of big-game hunting. The Langfords were not alone. They were accompanied by a seasoned group of hunters who had spent years navigating the treacherous terrain and understanding the intricate patterns of the Alaskan wilderness. The group had set up camp in a clearing surrounded by towering pines and thick underbrush, their tents and equipment carefully arranged to avoid detection from the area's natural inhabitants. Each day they ventured deeper into the forest, tracking various signs of wildlife, but the hunt had yet to yield the prize they sought. On the third day, as the sky above turned an intense blue, the hunters picked up the unmistakable signs of a large grizzly bear. Its massive tracks and freshly broken foliage suggested an impressive creature that would be a significant challenge and a worthy trophy. Simon, Owen, and the hunters spent hours following the bear's trail, navigating through the tangled undergrowth and steep inclines. The pursuit was grueling, but the thrill of the chase kept their spirits high. As the day wore on, the bear's trail grew fainter. By late afternoon, it became clear that they had lost their quarry. Disheartened but determined, the group returned to camp as twilight approached. They regrouped, sharing their observations and theories about the bear's possible whereabouts. The forest around them was beginning to darken, the shadows lengthening and the air growing colder. The team prepared for the evening, unaware of the danger that lurked just beyond their camp. As night fell, the forest seemed to come alive with sounds. The crackling of the campfire, the distant hoot of an owl, and the occasional rustling of leaves created an eerie symphony. The Langfords and their team settled into their tents, each wrapped in the safety of their sleeping bags, the warmth of their campfire a comforting presence against the encroaching cold. In the deepening darkness, a large shadow moved silently among the trees. The grizzly bear, driven by a combination of hunger and the instinct to defend its territory, had returned to the area where it had been pursued. It moved cautiously but with purpose, drawn to the scent of the humans and the disturbance they had created. The bear's massive form was barely visible in the gloom. Its senses were heightened, and its intent was clear. The bear's presence abruptly shattered the night. Without warning, it crashed into the camp, its immense bulk smashing through tents and scattering equipment. The sudden chaos was overwhelming. The campfire's glow flickered erratically, casting distorted shadows as the bear roared its fury, its growls reverberating through the night. The campers scrambled in confusion, their initial panic quickly giving way to the stark reality of their situation. Owen, disoriented and separated from the group, stumbled through the darkness, his heart pounding in his chest. The bear's attack had created a chaotic scene with tents torn to shreds and gear strewn across the ground. In the confusion, Owen's attempts to find safety only led him further into the wilderness. Once an adventure, the forest now felt like a labyrinth of danger and uncertainty. The remaining hunters, realizing the severity of the situation, mounted a desperate search. Their flashlights cut through the darkness, but the thick forest and the bear's possible return made their task difficult. Their shouts and calls for Owen were swallowed by the night, leaving them with the chilling realization that the same bear might pursue them. As the hours passed, the search became more frantic. The hunters retraced their steps, hoping to find any sign of Owen amidst the devastation. Having satiated its initial rage, the bear seemed to have retreated but was still a looming threat. Every rustle of the leaves and every twig snap was met with heightened alertness. The group's efforts were increasingly desperate, their fear growing as they considered the possibility that they were now the hunted. By the early hours of the morning, exhaustion set in. The hunters were physically drained and mentally anguished, their search proving fruitless. Once teeming with the promise of adventure, the forest now seemed an impenetrable fortress of despair. Their situation had transformed from a thrilling hunt to a desperate struggle for survival. As dawn broke, the hunters were forced to face the grim reality. Owen had not been found, and the bear's presence was a constant reminder of the danger they faced. The once exhilarating experience of hunting had turned into a sobering lesson about the limits of human intrusion into the wild. The bear's actions, driven by instinct and survival, had underscored the peril of underestimating nature's power. In the aftermath, the camp was a scene of stark devastation. The bear's rampage had left a trail of destruction, and Owen's absence was a painful reminder of the cost of their adventure. The hunters, now faced with the task of returning to civilization, were left to grapple with the moral implications of their pursuit. The thrill of the hunt had been overshadowed by the brutal reality of nature's unforgiving response. The Arctic Circle, a realm of unyielding ice and endless white, had long held a mystique that beckoned explorers and dreamers alike. For the Peterson family, this icy frontier promised a rare adventure, a once-in-a-lifetime journey to a remote research outpost nestled amid the vast frozen wilderness. The outpost, run by a team of dedicated wildlife scientists, was isolated yet equipped to offer a rare glimpse into one of the harshest environments on Earth. Henry and Alice Peterson, along with their two children, Lily and Bowen, had arrived with eager anticipation. Henry, a geologist with a penchant for adventure, was captivated by the stark beauty of the Arctic landscape. Alice, a historian fascinated by polar exploration, looked forward to the opportunity to observe the region's unique history. Lily, age 12, and Bowen, 8, were thrilled at the prospect of seeing polar bears and the northern lights. The outpost, built to withstand the relentless Arctic conditions, was a collection of sturdy buildings connected by enclosed walkways. The scientists, including Dr. Ava Milner and her team, had spent years studying the Arctic's diverse wildlife and fragile ecosystem. Their expertise and meticulous planning ensured the safety of visitors, yet the sheer remoteness of the outpost meant that any foray into the wilderness required caution and communication with the team. On the second morning of their stay, the Peterson family awoke to a sky shrouded in a soft, diffuse light. A serene calm enveloped the landscape, the vast expanse of ice glittering under the low-hanging sun. The family, keen to make the most of the day, decided to embark on a short walk beyond the confines of the outpost. Their plan was simple, a brief excursion to explore the undisturbed snow and possibly catch a glimpse of Arctic wildlife. Henry had prepared for the walk with his usual thoroughness. The family donned their cold-weather gear, layered clothing, insulated boots, and goggles to shield their eyes from the biting wind. Despite the preventive measures, they were not aware of the crucial detail they had overlooked, notifying the research team of their plans. As they ventured out, the Arctic landscape unfolded in all its stark beauty. The ice stretched endlessly, a pristine white blanket interrupted only by the occasional dark silhouette of a distant ridge. The Peterson family moved with a sense of wonder, their footsteps muffled by the deep snow. They marveled at the crystalline ice formations and the peculiar patterns of frost on the snow-covered ground. Unbeknownst to them, a different drama was unfolding in the icy wilderness. A grizzly bear, a formidable and rare visitor to these northern latitudes, had been drawn to the area by the promise of food. Having ventured farther south than usual, the bear was driven by a relentless hunger and a desperate need to sustain itself before the onset of winter. The grizzly, a massive creature with a shaggy brown coat and a distinctive hump over its shoulders, had been silently tracking the Peterson family. Its keen senses, heightened by the need to hunt and survive, had detected the faint scent of the humans, a curiosity that gradually turned into a dangerous obsession. The bear's approach was deliberate, each step taken with a calculated stealth that belied its enormous size. As the family wandered further from the outpost, the grizzly drew closer. The cold, crisp air carried the faintest traces of the family's scent, guiding the bear's path. It moved through the snow with a heavy, purposeful gait, its eyes fixed on the figures ahead. The bear's powerful muscles rippled beneath its fur, each movement a testament to its raw strength and agility. Henry, Alice, Lily, and Bowen continued their exploration, blissfully unaware of the impending danger. They had ventured into a particularly remote area where the snow lay undisturbed, and the only sounds were the crunch of their footsteps and the occasional call of a distant bird. The family stopped to admire a particularly striking ice formation, their laughter echoing in the frozen expanse. The grizzly bear watched from a distance, its robust frame concealed by the snowy landscape. The animal's breath came in heavy, visible puffs as it prepared for the final approach. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of the humans directly to the bear's nostrils. Its instincts were finely tuned, and the time for stealth was over. The grizzly surged forward, its bulk breaking through the snow with alarming speed. The family's idyllic moment shattered as the grizzly emerged from the snow-covered ridge. The bear's sudden appearance was a jarring contrast to the serene surroundings. Its deep and resonant growl cut through the stillness, an unmistakable warning of the peril that had arrived. Panic erupted as the family realized the threat. Henry's first instinct was to shield his family. He pushed Alice and the children behind him, positioning himself between them and the advancing bear. Alice, her face etched with fear, clutched Lily and Bowen tightly, her eyes wide with terror as the bear drew closer. Lily and Bowen clung to their parents, their cries swallowed by the Arctic silence. The grizzly, driven by a primal hunger and aggression, charged with terrifying force. Its powerful legs propelled it forward, snow flying in its wake. The bear's roar was deafening as it closed the distance, its claws extended and teeth bared. Henry's attempts to fend off the bear were futile. The creature's strength and speed were overwhelming. The struggle was brutal and swift. The bear swiped at Henry with its massive claws, each strike carrying the weight of its formidable strength. Henry fought valiantly, but the odds were stacked against him. The unrelenting force of the grizzly's attack met his efforts to protect his family. The bear's teeth sank into Henry's shoulder, and he collapsed under the weight of the assault. Her heart racing with terror, Alice tried to pull Lily and Bowen away, but the bear's focus was unyielding. The children's screams were swallowed by the sound of the bear's growls and the harsh Arctic wind. The fight for survival was a desperate and brutal affair, the family's efforts to escape thwarted by the sheer power of the grizzly. As the bear's ferocity reached its peak, the Arctic landscape bore witness to a scene of unimaginable horror. The once serene expanse of ice had become a battleground, the snow stained with the blood of the Peterson family. The bear's attack left no room for hope. Its force was overwhelming, and its hunger insatiable. Eventually, the bear, sated for the moment, retreated into the wilderness. The quiet returned, a chilling reminder of the violence that had just unfolded. The Arctic landscape, now marred by the tragedy, stood silent witness to the end of the Peterson family's ill-fated adventure. Back at the outpost, Dr. Ava Milner and her team were engulfed in a state of grim realization. The Peterson family's absence, combined with their delayed return, led to a frantic search. It was not until the team discovered the blood-stained snow and the remnants of the family's belongings that the full extent of the tragedy became apparent. The scientists, familiar with the dangers of the Arctic and the unpredictable nature of its wildlife, were overcome with guilt. They had assumed that their warnings about the dangers of venturing too far from the outpost would suffice. The failure to anticipate the potential threat posed by the grizzly bear had led to a devastating loss. The aftermath of the attack was somber. The surviving researchers grappled with the haunting reality of what had transpired. Having disappeared into the vast, icy wilderness, The bear became a grim reminder of the harshness of the Arctic environment. For the Peterson family, their once-in-a-lifetime adventure had ended in a tragedy that would forever echo in the cold embrace of the Arctic shadows. In the remote wilderness of the Pacific Northwest, where ancient trees reach skyward and mist shrouds the earth in perpetual twilight, a group of 8 contestants faced a challenge that tested their survival skills to the limit. They had been dropped into this untamed land as part of a high-stakes wilderness survival reality TV show, tasked with building shelters, foraging for food, and enduring the elements for 30 days. The contestants, each a mix of amateur survivalists, thrill seekers, and reality TV enthusiasts, had been divided into 2 teams. As the days passed, the reality of their situation set in. Food was scarce and tempers flared as the supplies dwindled. Once a picturesque backdrop, the forest loomed as a relentless adversary. The camp was situated beside a flowing creek, a modest shelter of tarps and makeshift wooden frames barely protecting them from the unpredictable weather. The contestants had been diligently working to build their shelters and gather what they could from the land, but the increasingly harsh conditions undermined their efforts. Food supplies had become a significant source of discord, with rationing leading to frequent arguments and heightened stress. As the 20th day of the challenge dawned, a dense fog rolled through the forest, blanketing the area in an eerie stillness. The contestants lay in their shelters, exhausted and restless, the sounds of the forest occasionally interrupted by distant, haunting calls. They had long grown accustomed to the rhythmic crunch of the forest floor beneath their feet, the occasional twig snap, and the underbrush's distant rustling. Yet the familiar sounds took on a new, more menacing quality on this particular morning. The grizzly bear, a powerful creature weighing over 600 pounds, had been stalking the area for days. Drawn by the scent of the contestants' dwindling food supplies and their human presence, the bear approached their camp with cautious but determined steps. Its large, curved claws and muscular frame moved with surprising stealth for such a large animal. As it neared the camp, the bear's sense of smell was overwhelmed by the aroma of the contestants' food scraps. The first signs of the impending danger were subtle. A shift in the forest's ambience, a series of rustling noises growing louder, and the sudden sharp calls of alarm from the wildlife. Unbeknownst to the contestants, the bear was closing in on their camp. It approached with a sense of purpose, its massive head low to the ground, its nose twitching as it detected the scent of food. As the early morning light struggled to penetrate the thick forest canopy, the bear finally emerged from the underbrush. It moved with deliberate intent towards the food cache the contestants had left out, a collection of foraged berries, nuts, and a few scraps of meat. The bear's massive frame cast a shadow over the small, flimsy shelter where several contestants were still sleeping. Emily Valois, a determined and seasoned survivalist, was the first contestant to notice the bear. Her instincts kicked in as she awoke to the low growls and the sound of the bear's heavy breathing. Her eyes darted to the source of the commotion, and panic surged through her veins. She quickly assessed the situation, realizing that the bear was only a few feet away from the food cache and dangerously close to their shelter. Emily's mind raced as she scrambled to alert the others. Her actions were swift but chaotic. She tried to wake her teammates while simultaneously devising a plan to confront the bear. The bear focused solely on the food and seemed oblivious to the human presence until it was too late. The contestants' shouts and movements finally attracted their attention. With a sudden guttural roar, the grizzly bear charged at the source of the noise. The force of the attack was overwhelming. The bear's powerful limbs flailed wildly, its claws slashing through the air with deadly precision. The contestants scrambled to escape the bear's path, their fear palpable as they attempted to regroup and assess their situation. The struggle to fend off the bear was frantic and disorganized. Realizing the urgency of the situation, Emily grabbed a large, heavy branch from the ground and used it as a makeshift weapon. Her movements were driven by adrenaline and sheer willpower as she swung the branch with all her might, hoping to deter the bear. The other contestants, disoriented and panicked, attempted to use whatever tools they had, knives, sticks, and even pieces of their shelter, to fight back. The bear's aggression was relentless. It targeted the nearest contestants, its mighty jaws snapping shut with a terrifying force. The sounds of struggle filled the forest. Screams of terror, the roar of the bear, and the chaotic shuffling of bodies. Emily's heroic efforts were notable as she managed to draw the bear's attention away from her fellow contestants, taking the brunt of the bear's fury upon herself. Despite Emily's valiant attempts to protect her teammates, the bear's strength proved overwhelming. The attack was brutal and unrelenting. Several contestants were injured, their screams blending with the bear's growls as they fought to escape its clutches. Emily's courageous actions, though admirable, could not prevent the inevitable tragedy. The grizzly bear, driven by its primal instincts and the scent of blood, continued its assault until the presence of a nearby camera crew, who had been alerted by the commotion, intervened. Having witnessed the entire ordeal, the crew finally managed to drive the bear away using noise and flashbang devices. The bear retreated into the forest, leaving behind a scene of chaos and devastation. The aftermath was a grim tableau. The forest floor was strewn with debris, and the air was thick with the acrid smell of fear and blood. The injured contestants were hurriedly transported to medical facilities, their injuries a stark reminder of the perils of their challenge. Emily Valois, though seriously injured, survived, her bravery having safeguarded the lives of several others. However, that day's physical and emotional scars would remain with her and her fellow contestants forever. As the medical teams worked to stabilize the injured, the remaining contestants were left to process the trauma and the profound loss. Once a symbol of their struggle and resilience, the camp now stood as a haunting reminder of the dangerous line they had walked. The reality TV show's producers faced intense scrutiny as the footage of the attack aired, sparking a wave of ethical debates about the risks associated with such extreme challenges for the sake of entertainment. In the vast expanse of Glacier National Park, a group of 4 college students embarked on a trek that would test their limits and reveal the harsh realities of nature. The sun was still high in the sky when Lydia Fenton, Alex Monroe, Clara Brooks, and Ethan Cole set foot on the challenging Grinnell Glacier Trail. Their excitement was palpable, fueled by months of preparation and their collective experience in hiking. The trail, renowned for its rugged beauty and demanding terrain, promised an adventure unlike any they had experienced before. Lydia, the group's unofficial leader, meticulously planned their route, confident in their ability to tackle the obstacles that lay ahead. As they ascended the trail, the terrain became increasingly treacherous. Steep slopes and loose gravel required careful navigation. They paused occasionally to adjust their gear and hydrate, their camaraderie evident in their shared laughter and stories. However, their confidence, while justified, began to lead them astray. They ventured into uncharted territory in their eagerness to explore a particularly scenic area off the main trail. The path they followed grew narrower and more convoluted, the once familiar terrain now unfamiliar and disorienting. Lydia checked her map and GPS, but the devices were becoming less reliable as they ventured further off their intended path. The group's initial enthusiasm began to wane, replaced by mounting concern as they realized their mistake. They were lost. Nightfall arrived quickly in the wilderness. The students set up a temporary camp, using their headlamps to illuminate their surroundings. They huddled close, their laughter replaced by worried murmurs about their predicament. The chill in the air and the encroaching darkness heightened their sense of vulnerability. Lydia and Alex attempted to retrace their steps, but the forest's dense canopy and the disorienting shadows made their efforts futile. The rustling of leaves and the occasional snap of twigs underfoot did little to reassure them. As the night deepened, an unsettling quiet fell over the camp. The students' tiredness and anxiety were palpable as they settled down to rest, their senses alert to the unfamiliar sounds of the wilderness. Unbeknownst to them, the rustling was not the benign sound of a passing animal, but the approach of a grizzly bear drawn by the smell of their food. The bear, a massive creature with a coarse brown fur and a formidable presence, had been wandering through its territory when it caught the scent of the students' provisions. Driven by its keen sense of smell and hunger, the bear followed the scent trail to the camp. The first indication of the bear's presence was the sudden and loud crashing of underbrush near the campsite. The students, jolted awake by the commotion, scrambled to their feet, their hearts racing with fear. The bear emerged from the darkness, its eyes reflecting the faint glow of their headlamps. The sheer size of the creature, combined with its robust build, struck terror into their hearts. Panic erupted as the bear, disoriented by the sudden movement, charged toward the nearest source of the smell, Lydia's backpack where their food supplies were stored. The students' attempts to shout and make noise only seemed to agitate the bear further. Lydia, trying to protect her belongings, was the first to face the bear's wrath. The creature swiped its massive paw, knocking her to the ground. The impact left Lydia badly injured, her cries of pain swallowed by the surrounding wilderness. Driven by sheer survival instinct, Alex, Clara, and Ethan grabbed whatever makeshift weapons they could find: hiking poles, a flashlight, and a cooking pot. They swung at the bear, attempting to fend it off, but their efforts were largely ineffectual against the bear's sheer power and aggression. The Grizzly, relentless and focused on its prize, paid little attention to their futile attempts to drive it away. Clara, trying to shield Ethan, was struck by the bear's claws, her screams mingling with the chaos of the attack. The struggle was brutal and chaotic, each swipe and bite of the bear a reminder of its overwhelming strength. The students' makeshift defenses were no match for the bear's ferocity. Ethan, desperately trying to pull Clara away from the bear, was also injured, his injuries compounded by the bear's relentless assault. In the midst of the attack, the bear's hunger seemed insatiable. Still, it eventually began to retreat, perhaps satisfied with the chaos it had wrought or drawn away by other stimuli. The bear's departure left the campsite in disarray, the students' provisions scattered, and their campsite torn apart. With the bear gone, the severity of the injuries became starkly evident. Lydia and Clara were both in critical condition, their injuries severe, and their chances of survival uncertain. Alex and Ethan, though injured themselves, were somewhat less severely hurt, but still in need of immediate medical attention. They quickly assessed their situation, their minds racing through the options available to them. They had no means of communication, their cell phones having been left behind or damaged in the chaos. Their only hope was to stay put and wait for rescue, hoping that their distress signals or the bear's disturbance would eventually draw attention. As the hours passed, the cold of the night settled in, and the pain of their injuries became a constant reminder of their dire situation. The remaining students huddled together, their shivering bodies providing a small measure of comfort in the face of their predicament. The sense of helplessness was overwhelming, each passing moment a reminder of the fragility of their situation. Morning eventually arrived, bringing with it a glimmer of hope. Initially faint and inconclusive, the distant sound of a rescue team's helicopter grew louder and more distinct as it approached. Despite their injuries, the students managed to signal the approaching aircraft, their strength waning but their determination undiminished. The rescue team, guided by the signs of distress and the damage left behind, arrived just in time to provide the critical aid that the students needed. The Bradley family reunion was in full swing in the vast expanse of Yellowstone National Park. Relatives from every corner of the United States had converged on the secluded campground to celebrate their annual gathering amid the park's untamed beauty. The week had been marked by hikes through ancient forests, fishing in crystal-clear lakes, and the shared joy of reconnecting with loved ones. On this particular evening, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm, golden glow over the campground. Families clustered around crackling campfires, the air filled with the rich aroma of roasting marshmallows and the irresistible scent of sizzling sausages. Laughter and stories mingled with the symphony of crickets and distant calls of wildlife. Children chased each other through the twilight, their shrieks of delight punctuating the serene landscape. In the midst of this harmonious scene, the Bradley family had gathered around their central campfire. There was John Bradley, the patriarch, with his silver hair and deep-set eyes reflecting both wisdom and warmth. His wife, Martha, bustled about, ensuring everyone had their fill of food. Their children, Amanda, a high school teacher with a passion for nature, Doug, a wildlife photographer with a penchant for adventure, and Claire, a dedicated nurse with a soft spot for animals, each engaged with their own families, sharing stories and laughter. The night wore on, and the firelight flickered against the encroaching darkness. The smell of burnt marshmallows and melting chocolate wafted through the crisp air, creating a sweet and inviting scent. The Bradley family, caught in their tales of yesteryears and dreams for the future, remained blissfully unaware of the danger lurking just beyond the edge of the campground. A grizzly bear, lured by the irresistible aroma of marshmallows and the faint traces of cooking meat, had been drawn closer to the campsite. The bear, a massive creature with a coat of dark brown fur and powerful muscles, crept cautiously through the underbrush. Its senses were finely tuned to the scents and sounds of the campground. With each step, the bear's massive paws crushed fallen leaves and twigs beneath it, moving with a deliberate and stealthy grace. The first sign of trouble came when a sudden chill seemed to descend upon the campsite. The Bradley family's laughter and chatter continued, oblivious to the ominous presence now mere yards from their camp. The bear, its keen nose twitching and nostrils flaring, emerged from the shadows and into the dim light of the campfire. John Bradley was the first to notice the creature. He turned, his eyes widening as he saw the hulking form of the grizzly at the edge of the campsite. His heart raced as he processed the sight, the bear's dark eyes reflecting the fire's flickering light. Panic quickly spread through the group as they realized the imminent danger. The grizzly let out a low, rumbling growl, a sound that seemed to reverberate through the air. It charged forward with terrifying speed, its massive body propelling it through the campground. The family members scrambled in all directions, their previously joyful gathering descending into chaos. Screams of terror replaced the laughter, and the crackling fire seemed to grow more minor and less significant against the backdrop of the bear's ferocious advance. Seeing the bear's trajectory, Amanda Bradley grabbed her young daughter and fled toward the nearby car. Her hands trembled as she fumbled with the keys, trying desperately to get the vehicle started. Having already grabbed his camera bag, Ethan shouted for everyone to retreat. His calls were drowned out by the din of panicked voices and the bear's relentless growls. The bear's attack was swift and brutal. It targeted the nearest sources of food first, scattering the roasting marshmallows and sausages into the underbrush. Then its focus shifted to the people. Martha Bradley was caught in the bear's path as she tried to shield her grandchildren, her screams swallowed by the bear's roar. The bear's claws raked across her legs, causing her to fall to the ground. The grizzly's massive jaws snapped shut, and the frantic struggle of Martha and her grandchildren added to the chaos. Trying to call for help, Claire found herself face to face with the bear. She managed to get a few steps away from the attacking creature, but the bear's ferocity was unmatched. It lunged at her, its powerful frame forcing her to stumble backward, her attempts to retreat futile. She scrambled toward a nearby tent, hoping to use it as a barricade, but the bear easily ripped through the fabric, sending the tent's contents scattering. In the commotion, some family members made it to their cars, locking themselves inside and starting the engines. The sight of headlights piercing the darkness did little to deter the bear, which continued its rampage through the campsite. The once vibrant campfire was now reduced to a smoldering pile of embers, its warmth gone, leaving only the cold reality of the attack. The grizzly's rampage was both ferocious and methodical. It swept through the campground, causing destruction and leaving chaos in its wake. The bear's heavy breathing and guttural growls filled the night, a stark contrast to the once serene environment. Its path of destruction was clear: torn tents, scattered belongings, and the haunting silence of those who had fallen. As the night wore on, the bear's assault gradually subsided. It eventually retreated into the wilderness, leaving behind a scene of utter devastation. The survivors emerged from their shelters, their faces pale and eyes wide with shock. The campground was littered with evidence of the violence that had transpired: overturned camping gear, ripped clothing, and the haunting remnants of the bear's attack. In the aftermath of the attack, the Bradley family was left grappling with the trauma and loss. The survivors huddled together, their once joyous reunion now marred by grief and fear. The sound of emergency sirens soon filled the air as rescue teams arrived to assist and investigate the horrific event. The park rangers began their work, assessing the damage and searching for the bear, which had vanished into the dense forest. The attack had a profound impact on the community and sparked a renewed call for stricter safety measures at national park campsites